I think one person probably will be, because she has messaged me before when I've been like 5 minutes late, like, where are you?
Oh, I don't have anyone like that, I don't think.
Only not consistently. Right, okay. It's saying we are live now.
So that means that she's,
Yeah. Okay. I believe we are live in my group and on my YouTube channel. So welcome everybody. It's just taken me half an hour to sort out dodgy internet, and Kara has sat here so patiently, and she managed to get her little boy to bed for 8 o'clock. So it's basically a miracle that we're here at all live streaming. So I'm just going to double check. And because the women in my group know me quite well, yes, we are live. The women in my group know that I am very open with like menstrual cycle awareness and where I'm at. So just to kind of start off by saying that I was glad today that I'm in the spring phase of my menstrual cycle, because I had a job interview and I'm doing this, and yeah, it's a great time to be out there in the world. So I would really love to welcome everyone tuning in and everyone watching back. This is conversation 2 of shifting your mindset and growing into your potential. My name is Dr. Sally Eccleston, psychologist and yoga teacher, and I am here with Kara Leigh. Kara, would you love to introduce yourself and just say a little bit about your business as well?
Yeah, so I'm Kara Leigh. I'm a spiritual mentor. I work with busy women who want to help align themselves, mind, body, heart, and soul. I currently work I work with the moon cycles. I also work with tarot, and I'm a specialist in sacred self-care as well.
Love all of that. And we're going to dive into unpicking some of that terminology that you've just used, I think, because things like sacred self-care can mean a lot of different things to different people. Working with the moon cycles can mean different things to different people as well, depending on your perspective and whether you're a business owner or, so I'd love to unpick some of that. But just to start with how you came into what you're doing now. So a little bit about your journey, and also kind of any challenges or anything that felt particularly difficult to get to where you are now as well.
Okay, so it's been a very long journey. I started my spiritual journey when I was probably around 12, 13. I was going through a really tough time in my life, and as always with these things, in shadow work becomes our light work eventually. And I was going through a really, really tough time, and I basically was seeking answers of how to get through it. I was very young, I didn't have the toolkit, and I was just kind of seeking what I should do. And that is how I basically fell into spirituality, because it was the only thing that seemed to help me at the time. And so I started with mindset, funnily enough. I used to use self-suggestion techniques to help me with my mindset. I think it was my mindset that was in the gutter at the time, and I had a lot going on, and my mind was all over the place. So I used like self-suggestion techniques that would help bring myself into more positive mindset. And back then, I sound really old, there was no internet. So I used to read a lot of books. I know I sound really old. I used to read a lot of books about self-suggestion techniques and live and breathe this particular book. It's called You Are What You Think. The author, it's got a really strange name. It's like Taito, but I can put it in the comments later. but it really, really helped me. And then from that point onwards, I was just basically collecting crystals. I became really intrigued with the moon. Like, it all started to come together, trying yoga, meditations. And it was just a journey, really, you know, of all this stuff unfolding. And I healed myself through all of the techniques together. So I was actually going through an eating disorder, like a severe eating disorder, and anxiety and depression at a very young age. And I managed to, without any medical help, really push through it and heal myself. Essentially, they say no medical help. I did have to go on a small dose of antidepressants when I was 16, I believe, because it got really bad. But in terms of mindset, that was how, you know, I helped myself. And from there, I was then able to, it turned out was, I trained in beauty therapy. So I was using self-care techniques on all my clients. And I was finding that in the therapy room, that I was talking to my clients about how not only can they make themselves feel good on the outside, but they would always open up to me in the treatment rooms every time. And I would just be helping them with, okay, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And I sort of became their kind of go-to person, friends, family, for advice. And yeah, and kind of like learning, you know, massage, aromatherapy, reflexology, all those type of things on top and blended with spirituality, kind of like was the start of my journey into what I do now. So, and then with the work that I do now, it's kind of fast forwarding lots of years. But basically, I'm kind of mindful of how long, because I could talk for ages. So basically, in the lockdown we've just had, the first one, I was just very much like, okay, how can I tap back into my spirituality to help other people? It was like I was being called to it, as cliche as that is. It was a feeling of like, how can I help? How can I be of service? How can I use my mission in life to, and it just kind of went from there. And so I ended up in a mastermind, which Sally is in with me.
Yeah.
And we basically all help each other grow in our businesses, in our ideas, and how we want to show up in the world, and turning that into a business model. And basically, I was giving people tarot readings and then hosting moon ceremonies. And they were like, I cannot believe how much this has helped me in my business. Like, this has given me these ideas. It's given me time to reflect. It's given me these downloads. Like, so I basically came up with a concept of tarot, sacred self-care, and moon ceremonies using the 8 cycles of the moon, not just the 2, and just put them all together to create a maximum output for your business when you kind of do the inward work to make the outward work work. So that's essentially what I do in a nutshell.
Gorgeous. Yeah. And I forgot to say at the beginning, if anyone is watching along in the group or watching back, Kara is in my group. So if you have any questions or anything you want to comment along as you're watching, then I'll keep an eye on the comments, and Kara can also come back and answer things as well. So yeah, Kara, I've known you for nearly pretty much a year now, nearly a year as part of the mastermind. And I remember kind of, you know, getting to know you a little bit and finding out about your business and what you've been doing over the past few years. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, I bet a treatment with Kara is just amazing, because your energy is just so open and loving. And I can just feel that even being in your energy or receiving anything from you would be more than a beauty treatment. Like, I can feel how people would automatically start to open up to you and how you were kind of led down that path. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to start these series of conversations, which I said with Michelle as well, was that sometimes when people look into the world of wellbeing practitioners, it's very easy to forget that people all face their own challenges as well, including wellbeing practitioners. And as you've said, everyone kind of ends up growing from a place of darkness. And we all have those places of darkness, and we all have sometimes continuous mindset challenges as well that we have to overcome to keep growing. And, you know, I think for me, like one of the core things that I always come back to, especially when I'm working with clients, with women, is that once you really feel like you're progressing in your mindset, whatever it's about, whether it's about you know, how safe you feel in the world or money or anything, like once you can tap into that and you look at the beliefs that you have about yourself, then that can just make such a huge difference. And I think what I've heard you say there is that from a young age, you kind of felt like that, like once you started to tap into those beliefs that you had about yourself, then things started to change a little bit. Have I got that right?
Yeah. And it's really bizarre because back then it wasn't necessarily a thing. Nowadays, thank goodness, there's so much awareness around mental health. And back when I had the mental health issues, it was something that was kind of brushed under the rug, and it was seen as you're not normal. It was seen as just pull yourself together and you'll be okay. Just get on with it. So I was creating, without even knowing this stuff, I was creating affirmations like on little pieces of card for myself to help my mindset, to reassure myself. I didn't have, you know, I couldn't Google like affirmations for anxiety. I was making them back in the day. And because I thought that that was strange, and why am I writing? It was like it was being channeled. I mean, and I know now it was, but it was being channeled through me to do that as a practice. And I literally have got like journals full of affirmations. And now I'm like, I want to give them to everyone because they help me. But back then I would hide them up. I used to think there was something wrong with me for saying these things to myself in the mirror, you know. And now it's like, this is what we do to really help our mindset. And if we can get that across to women, like to honor that space and to use every resource that you have to really help rewire your brain of like childhood, of how we've been spoken to, how you speak to yourself, how society expects us to be as women, and just rewire that in such a nurturing way. And it takes time, like it is a practice. It's not like every day I feel amazing and like I've got through it. No, I literally still have to continue the practice now. But I feel like without it, I would quite quickly go back to, it's like a default mindset. So yeah, so in like my moon ceremonies, I do a lot of things around how to really tap into that deeper part of ourselves that talks to ourselves nicely, that gives ourselves beautiful affirmations that allow us to feel those heightened vibrational feelings and not come down to those lower vibrational. So my aim really is to bring that up so that you can manifest what you need, because when there's so many blocks in the way, whether that's your mindset or whether you're just stuck, you can't manifest what you want. So it's working through a ritual that helps break down those energetic blocks so that you can then manifest what you need to manifest and to feel more in alignment with who you are, you know. And I think naturally we are made to work with the cycles of the moon, but we've just lost our way. Like we've totally lost our way with society And so it's really simple, and just reconnecting back to nature and the things, you know, the moon, the sun, the seasons, you know, all of these things really help us stay in our most absolute purest self. And I think mindset is a big part of it, but I also believe that just tapping into like our own essence is so important.
Yeah, tapping into soul. Yes, I'm going to come back to the lunar cycle practice, but just to kind of dig a little bit deeper with the idea of the positive affirmations, because you know that I'm a psychologist. I'm just so interested in the interlink between what's shown in kind of Western psychology and, you know, what's demonstrated in research and also theory, because some of psychological theory isn't necessarily proven in research, and how that links with spirituality, because there is so much overlap. And, you know, I work with a lot of young people who have experienced really difficult life events, and there's something called when you establish like an internal self-concept from messages from the outside world. So basically, if you're consistently told that you're bad or you're unlovable or you're unworthy or whatever it is, then, you know, obviously you start taking that on board. And I think for some people, you don't even necessarily have had to have a really traumatic childhood for that to be true. And sometimes I feel like, you know, people feel this guilt that it's something that I hear people say anyway, you know, my childhood wasn't even that bad. Why do I have these beliefs about myself? You know, why do I have these experiences in adulthood? I think it's just so crucial to understand that childhood is such a crucial time that literally, like, even with the best intentions with parenting, we can take things on board, and also things happen to us that sometimes are out of the control of our parents, and that then shapes some of how we feel into adulthood. And I think there's such a growing awareness now that we can do something about that. But you're right, like previously there would have been little awareness of healing and looking at those beliefs that you're feeding to yourself. And I think for so many people that becomes subconscious, doesn't it? It's like it's been their truth and their reality for so long that actually until it's brought up to the surface, it's so difficult to recognize that it's there. And I just, you know, same as you, I feel like at the core of everyone is this, you know, it's this light, is this like soul that we just become disconnected from for various reasons, and we kind of like build up all these layers of ourselves, don't we, that disconnect us from our truth. So are the positive affirmations still something that you use to this day?
Yes. So I like to write them based on, I don't know, like it's more about, for me, it's about being in flow. So it's not about like a rigid practice of like, if I say these things, I'm going to feel this thing. So what I try and do is, once I tap into the moon cycle, for example, and let's say, let's do an example. So let's say it's the full moon in Libra, and that particular moon is about being in balance, say, example. You can then affirm to yourself to really bring in the earthly energies down that's coming down on us, and then you can align that with your affirmation. So I've become kind of I don't want to say advanced because that sounds, but you know, I guess because I've been doing it for so many years, it's like I know how to use the energies in different ways. So what I like to do in my moon ceremonies is to very small part of it is we say out loud different affirmations, because by saying them with our throat chakra and saying them out to the universe, you are then saying to the universe, this is what I want. So it's not a case of, you know, you're basically calling it in. You're aligning with that moon energy and you're saying, this is what I want. And that's not to say that you can't say different affirmations. You know, you can say anything that you personally feel called to at that time will be more potent. And then throughout the month, I mean, for example, in my tarot readings, I also bring in affirmations. So at the end of each tarot card, there may be an affirmation. Let me just I'll get an example. So like, whoop. So when I'm doing one, let's just take the Chariot card. Every single card that comes out. So this one says, I choose who I am becoming and I run towards it with conviction and consistent motion. So if you get that card and you read that every day until your next one, it's going to call in those energies, you know.
Yeah.
So I use affirmations in lots of different ways. And actually, sometimes I will go back to my little old ones that I used to write for myself because they're still just as powerful for me, because, you know, you can handwrite them. You can just play with it, really. It doesn't need to be like, you know, what we tend to do is we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do certain things in certain ways. And I feel like that's part of what I teach as a mentor, is just do things in your way to suit you. It's not about fitting into something. It's about kind of being really creative with it and enjoying it.
Yeah. And also that makes me think of the fact that like everything is within you anyway, right? You know, there's so many different things to draw on and so many different things to learn about, but ultimately like that's just your essence rising up. It's not something that needs to be created for you or something that's like missing or needs to be fixed. You know, all this stuff, the tarot and everything, it just kind of arises from within you, right? And also, you know, I think it's a really important point about saying things out loud, because we actually, on a psychological level, we process information differently compared to if we hear it, to when we write it, to when we say it. So that's also something I say a lot with, you know, my work with clients is try and not just write. If people are really used to writing, like to have things stuck around the house if they are working with positive beliefs or affirmations, and to be saying them out loud, to be saying them to their children, to be sharing them with their family. Because I sometimes feel like when people are on this journey, it can become a bit of a hidden practice, you know, like something that you do before bed, or something that you do, you know, like when you're not with hubby or not with kids. And actually I always say to people, like, share it, you know, as much as if you can take that beginning step of sharing something with someone in your family, because then it becomes even more powerful, right? It's like amplified when you're saying it out loud a lot more, I think. So you mentioned there about kind of intuitive practices and also leaning into the cycles of the moon and working with those. So do you just want to say a little bit about what you mean by the phases of the moon and why we would work with them in the first place?
Yeah. So a lot of people, obviously, we know the full moon, and we all look at the full moon and we think, oh, it's so beautiful. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, because it connects us all. Every single person on the planet, we can come together under the moon and we can all look at it. Then you have the new moon, which everyone, well, I say everyone knows it, maybe they don't. So the new moon is the beginning of the lunar cycle. And then 29 days after, you go through 8 phases between the new moon and the next new moon. There's 8 phases between. So the new moon's really about new beginnings. So having a ceremony around that time is really good to usher in like if you're starting a new project, if you want to plant something new in your life, if you want to, I don't know, birth a book, I don't know, whatever you're working on, it's something completely new, launching things in your business, in your life, whatever that is. So it's like a renewal. And then just before that, actually, you have what's called the dark moon, which is literally the day before. And this is really, really emotional. So a lot of people associate the full moon with emotion, but actually the dark moon is that really emotional moon. It's when you can't, literally the sky is black and you cannot see the moon at all. Then you've got the new moon. And then we go through these 8 cycles. So leading up to the full moon, you have the waning, the waxing moon. So I feel like I'm saying it. The waxing gibbous moon, waxing,
That's right.
I thought it's the waxing crescent moon. Yeah, it's the waxing crescent first. And then it's the waxing gibbous moon. And then it's, when you see in the sky and it's like a half moon. So that's the last quarter or the first quarter, whatever which
Makes
way.
me think of the Terry's chocolate orange. I have to full moon, half moon. I just can't hear the half moon without saying that. I'm sorry.
So, yeah, Terry's chocolate orange. So distracted from chocolate. Anyway, there's 8 cycles and every single cycle holds its own energy, so you can use it to your own advantage in your business, in your life. If you're a busy person particularly, the moon is known as a feminine energy, so you can really tap into that feminine flow. And so many moons ago, women used to use the cycles of the moon as like their everyday, it's just
to measure their periods as well.
To measure their periods,
yeah.
Absolutely. And that's where it all came from, isn't it? This kind of synchronicity.
Moon cycle. Yeah.
So I basically was just using the new moon and the full moon, and then I had so much good feedback from my clients saying all these different things, how it's helped them and they feel different. And then I thought, hang on, there's 2 cycles here. Let me tap into all the other 6 and let's just do an experiment. And I was just blown away by how you can use every single phase and know when to rest, because rest is just important as being productive. Know when to launch a project, know when to post on your social media, know when to write your gratitude list, know when to manifest. And the more you kind of learn this very natural rhythm of how the universe works, the more you're in tune, the more you can show up more in tune. And it's almost like a forgotten ritual. The more I'm doing it, the more it's like it feels so natural and so normal. So I use every single cycle to my advantage. I try and use it along with my menstrual cycle as well, which is really interesting because I know now like every single part, which is amazing. And it just stops us with all of this like striving energy and this masculine and feminine energy work together. So it's not like get rid of the masculine. It's more like let's tap into our feminine energy to assist our masculine energy and use it together to make that balance, and that's kind of what I teach. And that is why I'm so passionate, because it's helped me and my clients so much grow their businesses in a untapped resource way, because it's like I believe that businesses of the future will truly be using these things, but it's something that's come round 360. It's not like a new thing, it's just we've forgotten about it. And I would say maybe in Eastern worlds or Eastern societies, they use it more than we do over here. They're probably like, who is this girl? We do this anyway. But, over here, we just don't do it. We're very linear. We work to calendar. We work like a hamster wheel. And that's not how life is meant to be led. It's not meant to be led like do, particularly women. We're not made to do that. So yeah, it's about just being able to be productive in a way that's going to serve us and not burn us out and make us stressed.
Yeah. I think some women listening will have heard me speak about cycle awareness in terms of menstrual cycle awareness. So this idea of tuning back into natural rhythms won't be new to them. But I think, like you say, a lot of us spend a lot of time on a hamster wheel. And I think for some women, it feels like a very far off idea to be tuned in to the extent that you're talking about, because I know that some of the women in this group work full time and have other responsibilities, like parenting, like you do, and other caring responsibilities. So what you're describing is so different to what society expects from us, isn't it? And, I know a lot of women in this group will just be thinking, well, hang on, I have like time when I'm at work and time when I'm not at work, or time when I'm on leave. And so, I leave all the things that I want to get done for the time that I'm off work. And then when I'm on work, I have all these responsibilities. Like, how could I possibly begin to tune into the lunar cycles a little bit more? So I'm wondering if you could just say a kind of like initial step to working towards what you've described.
So I teach, to begin with, setting, I think, a really good way. Okay, so I would say 2 hours a month is nothing, is it? You look at it like 2 hours a month, and I'm a busy woman, and I can make 2 hours out of my month. So as a beginner, starting with the full moon and the new moon, and literally either having a ceremony where you attend one live, but making that time, it's like your sacred self-care. So taking that time, carving it out. If you can sit and watch TV in the evenings, you can sit and watch a Zoom call with your video off, right? If you can have an evening reading a book or having a bath, you can spend an hour on a Zoom call with your video off if you want to have your video off. Most women like to, because then they can just detach. It's not about sitting up and watching something. It's about rest. It's about recharging, recuperating, and taking the little tiny steps to do that. So I would say, saying to yourself mentally, again, going back to this thing, if I can put aside 2 hours a month for my sacred self-care, I won't feel so overwhelmed. I won't feel so stressed. I will have more energy. I will actually have more time, because you're filling your cup up. If you're sat there watching, I'm being real now. If you're sitting there watching Netflix or whatever, I'm not saying I don't do it, but what I'm saying is sacrificing that hour or those 2 hours is where something is just projecting onto you. But actually with this, you're like filling your cup up, and the next day, leading then either to the new moon or the full moon, you have this like incredible energy. You feel more connected to yourself. You can show up to your family in a more calm way, and you've taken that time, and it's like tapping in again to that parasympathetic, because within that I do meditations as well, and yeah, just really connecting back into yourself. You'll start to notice more flow. And I was experimenting, and like I didn't watch TV for probably about 6 months, and the amount of stuff I got to do and fill my cup, I was determined, right, how can I really fill my cup up in this pause? And what can I do to really heal? Essentially, we are healing because we're on this hamster wheel and we're tired, we're exhausted. And we need this. We need something that's going to like remind us who we are, what we need, you know.
Yeah.
So it seems like I haven't got time for that. But you know what? Everyone has time for it. They really, really do.
Yeah.
So I say 2 hours a month to begin with. And then the rest of the other little cycles, they really are important, but there's ways around learning about the cycle. So that's one thing in my membership I talk to my ladies about, is like, and I make it about women who are busy. So I'm not in there, you know, with like long presentations. It's literally like, this is what you need to do between there and there. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I might read it.
Yeah.
I might tag them and say, read it when you get time. Then they know, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. Boom, done. It doesn't need to be like a huge investment of your time. It really doesn't. I would say if you want to work with the 8 cycles, you're probably looking at 4 hours a month maximum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's really making me think about, you know, the growing into your potential part of these conversations, because it's almost like the response from so many people when you talk to them about how they are, or just that instinct response is, oh, I'm busy. Like, you know, I have that a lot in work. I work with a team of 40 psychologists and, you know, connected with people in education and working all over the city. And it's just like, people are busy. And, you know, there'll be some women in this group as well who maybe want to engage more in these kinds of topics or courses or programs, but just feel like it would be like another thing to do. And I think it's so important to have that message really clearly out there, that I'm not asking you to fit another thing into your time. I'm asking you to think about your priorities with your time, right? Because like, we do, obviously there is so much going on for people, you know, especially people with care responsibilities and things. But as you say, 2 hours a month to find time for yourself, you know, with someone else looking after the children is doable, isn't it? I think most people in this group would probably say an hour a week is doable. Most months, an hour a week. And it's kind of choosing something with that time that, as you say, helps you to kind of tune back in and make you feel more connected. And I think something with the lunar cycles for me as well is just going forward in your sense of intention.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and having like harnessing the energy of each lunar cycle as well, because the more you delve into it and you find out, you know, which of the astrology signs the moon has been in. And the other thing I was going to come back to was just this idea of, like, as you were talking about the new moon and this idea of birthing something or something new or creating, it was reminding me a lot of when I talk about the spring phase of our menstrual cycle, right? So the follicular phase period has ended, and the kind of similarities between the new moon phase and then the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle, because they're both kind of about a new phase, new beginnings. You know, I teach a lot that part of your menstrual cycle is a really good time to start something new. And then so it's all about rhythmical cycles is basically what I'm trying to say, isn't it? Like, there's so many similarities that we could map between the associations that we make amongst the phases of the moon and our own like inner cycles as women as well. But obviously we're not always in tune with the moon, are we, with our menstrual cycle? So sometimes, you know, inwardly it might feel like you've got something new beginning because of where you're at in your cycle, but then with the moon it might be a completely different energy. So I just wondered kind of if you had any views on that, about like the lunar cycles, maybe the energy of them having a really different feel to our own inward cycles, and how you kind of practice around that.
I sort of really figured out, like, for myself, that my own cycle is on the full moon. I get my period. So that is the climax. The full moon is the climax. So that kind of actually aligns really well with, you know, how the moon cycles work. And the more you are in alignment with the cycles, you'll notice a pattern of when you are, you know, whatever lunar phase that you're in. There's so much, like, I could talk about, like, scientifically speaking, when it comes to the moon and women's cycles, of how they are so linked together. And how much you bleed, how much stress you have, that, you know, with this lockdown, they're saying that there's been a huge link to women's menstrual cycles, like, messing up, because there's so much pressure. And they're saying that so many women are saying they've got these problems right now because of the lockdown. But I would say, just tuning in and starting to document when you have your period, when the full moon is. And again, I do a lot of this in my group as well. So I'll pop articles in that I found around the lunar cycles. When you're ready, have a look at it. There's little charts in there about why you would bleed at a new moon, why you would bleed at a full moon, and what that means to you. So it's all interconnected. And the more we tap into getting to know ourselves and really recognizing how we work, it's not about, this is how this works and that's it. It's so individual to every single woman. Like I say, for me, it's the full moon. It might now switch round to something else at some point. It's not set in stone. And I think that is the beauty of everything we talk about, is that the universe is ever changing, and it's kind of recognizing that we are part of it. And I think sometimes we almost become so robotic that we forget, weirdly, that we are part of everything. It's weird, isn't it? When you think, we forget ourselves, like, we are the same as trees, like, we are the same as nature. We came from a woman, like, it's so fascinating. And it's like, when you started your period, how old you were, and all of this has a big impact on the bigger picture. And that's what I like to get to, is the bigger picture of life, and tuning into that. And we're not robots. We're here to live our lives. We're here to experience our human bodies. But we are not our human bodies. We are souls, and connecting to that soul and understanding that will give you so much more of a happier life, so much more fulfillment, and that is what I'm all about, talking to you.
I found out a lovely statistic this morning from this. So, well, I don't do it consistently every single day, but there's this guy on Instagram called Stuart, what's his surname? But he's Breath Pod. He does a live breathing practice at 7:30 a.m. and it's gorgeous. And he said this morning that every time we take a breath in, we're breathing in a molecule of oxygen from every single person in the world that they breathed out. Wow. And apparently, so that's been shown in science, and apparently it's been shown that it's not just the oxygen of people alive, it's people previously on this planet as well.
That's so weird.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, just think about that every time you're breathing in.
Crazy concept. I actually I'm like, oh, whose breath have I just breathed?
Yeah.
But I actually say, like, the full moon is the out breath, the release and the let go. And then I say that the new moon is the in breath and what we're going to bring into our lives. So you can't have one without the other. So this is another thing I teach, is like, you can't just pop up on a new moon and expect your life to change. Like, you have to work with all of the cycles for it to flow effectively.
Yeah.
You can't have the
Yeah.
in breath without the out breath. So
Yeah,
it's really
absolutely.
learning again to work in rhythm, to work in cycle, instead of like, I was trying to kind of get this message across, and it's like, when you decide to invest in yourself in this way, it is a practice, and it is something like a dedication to get results. The things that I see results in my clients are the clients that have said, I'm actually going to spend this time because I know it's going to serve me. And they still work with me now. They love it. I think without it, they probably would feel disconnected, out of alignment, all of the opposites of what we really want to achieve. So it just becomes like, your normal everyday life.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I love what you said about the release. I have one of my teachers, Satu Tuamela. She I did some more training with her recently, and she's really interested in the idea of like getting empty. I know it sounds like a really kind of far out idea, but like, especially with kind of heart meditations and heart practices, and there's this idea that we always have to be so full up with stuff, like our hearts have to be full, we have to be madly in love, or like celebrating life all the time, we have to be like full of gratitude and full of kindness for other people. And it's like, to be a good person, people think that they always have to be full of something, but actually I think a really important practice is the emptying out. And like, how can you empty out from the heart energy space, or from wherever, to receive and to welcome back in, and to be able to feel that sense of fullness again. And I think that's just so like clearly reflected, isn't it, with nature, and with the lunar cycles. Like, we don't always have a full moon.
No,
It's
exactly.
like everything's always in rhythm. And
Yeah.
I think it's just such an important concept to kind of to understand. But it's like, when you get into these practices, it goes beyond understanding, doesn't it? It's the embodying of them. Like, you can't just, I think there's a difference between just kind of like going along with the idea and sort of understanding the principle, and like being like, oh yeah, okay, I kind of get that. I understand why that might make sense, to them being like, okay, I'm gonna like take this on board and actually do something with this in my life. It's a massive difference, isn't there?
And I notice the difference between the clients that really go all in and the clients that perhaps don't. And the ones that do, having huge shifts, like where they're like WhatsApping me, oh my goodness, this happened today, this manifested today, this came into my life today, versus maybe the ones that said, oh, sorry, I missed it again, I'm sorry. And I don't look at it like, well, this is my practice, this is your practice. And it's like with anything, the more you put in, the more you get at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
And really and truly, it doesn't take a lot of time and energy. It's an enjoyable practice. It's not like, sometimes if it's, say, an exercise practice, you might just think, I've got to do this, and it feels a bit like too much for you at the time. And in fact, I think I'm right in saying, correct me if I'm wrong, but your yoga, they teach that not to practice on the full moon and the new moon, don't they? Because apparently it's a time to focus on the moon, and it's like years, like ancient old, to not practice on those days because you take that time out for your spiritual moon alignment, you know.
I think it would depend on like the yoga school, obviously. I mean, I know that there's a moon cycle that it's traditionally taught for women to take days out for their period, but yeah, I've not heard that, but I'm sure somewhere in the very ancient lineage and practices of yoga that is true.
Yeah, they said as well, like with the full moon, is like people are too like all over the place, scatty, to
Yeah,
focus on the moves, and it's seen as dangerous. So
yeah.
they just said, right, no practicing on the full. I'm guessing they learned their lesson. You can imagine it, can't you? I mean, and then yeah, so there's no practicing on the full moon, but for a reason, you know. I think it's
Yeah.
in India where I was looking up something to do. I don't know, I read quite a lot. So it's definitely, it was in India, and they were saying that this is the practices that they say, you know, not to practice on the full or the new moon because health and safety, I guess.
The energy, yeah, health and safety. So health and safety risk, guys. Anyone in my membership, you still have to come to class on full moons.
Yeah, exactly.
What was I going to say? Yeah, I think there's a lot of like focus on the full moon energy, right? I don't know if you've noticed that, or if I see things on social media about the moon, it's a lot more likely to be about full moon than a new moon or a waning moon. Or have you noticed that? It's a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually started on the full moons. I was like full moon obsessed, and then once I'd then incorporated the new moon, I was like, okay, so it's again like the in-breath without the out-breath. Although the full moon is releasing and letting go, once you release and let go, you then need to allow that cycle to come through so that you can bring in again. No point releasing and letting go and kind of cleaning your vessel to then to do what, you know. It's like you then need the next step. You need to now bring in what you need. So I think it's really understanding, but there is so much around the full moon, and it's beautiful. So people are like loving and wanting to worship the full moon because it's just divinely beautiful. And the new moon, you can't really see it. So it's probably why it's more popular, because it's just beautiful, you know?
Yeah, visually. Yeah. Nice to look at. People are easily pleased.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think there's always been a part of me that's a little bit cynical. I think I've still got a part of me that's so used to years of like academic study and very kind of like what's the word, cerebral logic, like masculine energy dominant. So I think when I look at, because you know I'm on like various email newsletters, and sometimes I'll read through something that's telling me about the energy of the next moon cycle or the energy of the next full moon. And I kind of feel like you always end up taking from it what resonates with you, don't you, when you get these full moon reports. And sometimes, I don't know, there's a part of me that's still a little bit cynical on social media where I see people like, oh my God, the full moon energy is like crazy this time round, and like have people like not been sleeping? And honestly, part of me is like, well, maybe that's just you. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think sometimes we can pin a lot on something that catches our interest, right? And I think for me, there's always a balance between like absolutely be informed, be in tune, feel in alignment, feel more connected, but also still have that degree of like what's the word, judgment about it, I guess, you know, just that level of self-awareness of like, maybe my energy is a bit more heightened at this phase of the lunar cycle, but if I continue to feel like that, or Do you know what I mean? You don't want to kind of like pin everything on with the moon.
Yeah, it's a bit like, some people read their star sign every day, in a magazine that doesn't really have much backing to it, and believe it, and then they want to almost mirror what's going on that paragraph because that's what it said. It's very similar to that, isn't it? It's like, I read my star sign this morning and that means that this is going to be my day and this is how it's going to unfold, and it's not really, it's just very generalized. But I think when you've worked in particularly corporate environments and school environments, very like government run bodies, that we are very much in our minds a lot of the time. So I work at a college as well. So I'm in both worlds. I'm in like a very masculine kind of dominant world, and I'm in a very feminine world, my spirituality. So I can kind of relate to everyone, which is good because I can kind of see both sides. But also, if, for example, I already know if I wasn't to do this work now, that it would just put me out of balance. So again, it's not pinning everything on that and saying, right, this is how I'm going to live my life, it's going to be like this. It's really, again, about that balance of the two, both the feminine and the masculine, and knowing how to blend those together, but also going back to just doing what suits you personally, really. Everyone's individual, and not pushing a set thing, because we're so used to this way of thinking from like the age of 4. We go to school and that's what we're taught, and that I don't know if you'll ever shake it in our lifetimes because it's so ingrained in us, but actually it's not very natural for us to work that way. If we didn't have any of these structural systems, I'm not quite sure, we would just be, I don't even know, maybe
floaty beings, just molecules of oxygen.
Just watery things with like oxygen.
No, we need the structure, the container of the masculine, right? We need both, absolutely. So what's the energy of the moon at the moment for people who might be watching live or catching up shortly after?
So we've just finished the full moon on Sunday. So we're now in the waning gibbous moon. So that's really, again, you're still surrendering, you're still letting go. It's a really good time to practice gratitude. So thinking about leading to the end of the cycle, so the next new moon, is practicing gratitude. What have you learned? What lessons have you learned along the way? What are you really grateful for? Releasing anything that no longer serves you. So taking time to really consider habits, thoughts, behaviors that don't serve you, even like people that don't serve you. It's not just, right, I don't
get
want to
rid. Yeah.
It's not, it's just, being a bit gentle with it and considering perhaps certain people are maybe not serving you. And then preparing for the new moon. So the new moon is thinking about, I wouldn't necessarily start doing that right now, but just pondering on what things you want to manifest for the new moon, which is on April the 12th. And it's the new moon in Aries. I'm an Aries.
Fire.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm really excited for that. When it's an Aries moon, I'm really excited. So every single moon has a different flavor to it. So like we were saying, this one is new moon in Aries. So it's going to be, like you say, fire, new beginnings, bringing in the spring equinox still. Although it's kind of only just come in, it's still, bringing it through, particularly with the Aries energy. So yeah, interesting times.
Gorgeous. Okay. I would love just to kind of start drawing things to a close, although I could talk to you for ages, but I don't know how my partner would feel about not having dinner until 10 p.m. He's probably already eating without me. But what would be your 3 top tips for people who are either really struggling or have had a tough time during the pandemic for whatever reason? What would you say to them as 3 top tips as a bit of a starter?
3 top tips if you're feeling, that's a really good one. I would probably say surrender. Like surrendering to anything that you feel that you are, that you should be, that you should do. Just surrender and not put any expectations on yourself. It's easier said than done, but starting with that, just surrender to it and just say, okay, whatever, just surrender. So, thinking about that word throughout the day and being gentle on yourself, and then trusting in your inner dialogue. So trusting in your intuition, like the more you learn to trust in your own intuition. So if, for example, I have a lot of my clients that say, I've got so much to do, and they're pushing through all these things, burning themselves out. And if you just say, actually, I've got all this stuff to do, but what is my body telling me, right? My body's telling me to rest. And as much as you've got loads of stuff to do, and I get it, I'm the same. I used to be so vigilant with my housework, and now I'm like, if I want to rest, I'm going to rest, because I have to prioritize myself. And the more I honor myself and the way that my intuition is telling me, like, just sit down and have a break, just have a little nap, or I don't know, don't wash up. It's not, the world's not going to end, So that's my other tip. And then my third tip would be to really tap into those 3 things that I said. So tapping into the moon, sacred self-care. There's like so much I could talk on about sacred self-care. And then, if you've never had a tarot reading, I know everyone kind of has this perception of tarot as like this crazy woman, like giving you like your whole entire future in front of you. It's really not that. It's more about uncovering truths for you, and deeper meaning messages that will really help serve you moving forward. So it's not like, what will my life be like in 10 years? It's more like, what can I work on now in this moment? Self-growth, and kind of allowing yourself to go on that journey of self-growth. And I've got loads of tips. I mean, don't watch the radio, don't listen to the news, don't I could go on,
Kara's like top 50 tips for life. You could just write
don't watch the news.
Podcast about that. Don't watch.
It's just not serving anyone. I mean, it's just really creating this energy of fear, and everyone thinks it's information, but it really gets to our subconscious, and on a subconscious level, it's making us all live in this like fear, and we don't need that. And if you need to find information, just, I don't know, ask a friend. That's what I do. What's going on now?
Phone a friend if
Phone a friend, so and like try and lighten things up. Like having a laugh is so important. Like somehow, even if you watch some comedy on the TV, and just lightening that energy up, and having those feminine conversations with your friends, ringing your friends up for an hour, and tapping into the feminine when you're feeling really low.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Especially for women who spend a lot around men, or maybe live with family or whatever. I think that's really, really important. And I mean, in all seriousness, I know I was laughing when you were talking about the news, but I definitely noticed the difference in my mood. Like, just sticking to the radio headlines is sometimes enough for me in the morning. And sometimes I'm just like so sensitive to it now. I'm like, right, it gets halfway through, you know, if I've got 6 Music on or whatever, it gets halfway through the news in the morning and I just have to switch it off, because I'm like, no, I don't need that information in my day to have a good day. Like you say, if I want to find something out, I can find something out.
Yeah. So. And it's very, what I've noticed at the moment, it's very what ify. Like, what if we go into another lockdown? What if? And everyone's like, oh, what if we do? And it's like, you don't need to be like putting this anxiety in people's heads. We're already kind of like had enough.
Anyway.
And like, it was sunny a couple of days ago and they were like, but don't worry, it's going to snow next week. And it's just like, oh, thanks.
Thanks for bursting my sunshine bubble.
I know, it's just like, no, like, just stop it. If you listen to the words that they're saying, you'll notice they'll start on a high, like, today's really sunny, but don't worry, it will snow next week. Oh. Praise the snow.
Yeah, snow. We love snow. Jesus. Okay, I've absolutely loved this conversation. Kara, where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
So I've got a Facebook group called Beautiful Beings Tribe. I'm on Instagram as I am Kara Leigh. And I did say to Sally I would put my links below. I've also got a freebie at the moment as well, which is around working with the 8 cycles of the moon. So if anyone's interested in that, it's a freebie. It's basically 4 emails talking, it's like a mini moon series. It's talking around how to use the 8 cycles of the moon in your life. And if you have a business, it helps with that too. So yeah, that is pretty much how you can contact me.
Perfect. Yeah.
Or you can message me. I don't mind a DM. I'm very friendly and approachable.
In case you can't tell already, I'm very friendly, honest miss. Yeah, so Kara will, oh, my camera's just gone really weird. Kara will post in the comments ways of reaching her in the group, and also if you're watching on YouTube, then I'll make sure the information underneath the video has that same thing going on. Right, perfecto. Thank you so much, Kara. I've absolutely loved this. I don't know why.
Thank you for having me. It's been really nice talking about my geeky moon life.
No, I'm sure women in the group will have loved it. And yeah, feel free to comment, ask Kara any questions. Right, thank you so much, Kara, for sharing some of your evening with me. Thank you. All right, lots of love. There in the end. Take care.